Solomon Drayton didn't expect trouble when he walked into the Elmridge High Gymnasium. He had driven 8 hours straight from Temple, Texas, in his late wife's Dodge Charger, clutching a worn photograph of her holding their son Tyron as a baby. This was more than a graduation. It was a promise kept. He wore his Marine uniform not to show off, but because it reminded him of who he was before the war changed him. His posture was rigid, his face unreadable, but his eyes carried the weight of everything he'd seen overseas and lost at home. The gym was packed, buzzing with life, the scent of popcorn mixing with floor wax. He showed his ticket, got directed to the third row, sat down, and let the noise of the world settle around him. But then 2 security guards approached, Ashley Garvin and Mally, and asked him to move. Solomon had spent years navigating hostile terrain, reading body language, anticipating threats. These 2 weren't soldiers, but they carried themselves like they wanted control. When they told him this section was full and suggested he relocate, Solomon calmly explained he had the assigned seat. He pulled out his ticket again, showing them where his name was printed. They barely looked at it. Garvin insisted the area was full. Mally added that there were extra seats in the back. Solomon didn't flinch. He had been through worse. Ambushes, firefights, losing brothers in combat. He wasn't about to be pushed around in a high school gym over a chair. He told them he drove 8 hours to watch his son graduate and that he would be sitting right here. Some people nearby started paying attention. A woman 2 rows back whispered to her husband. Someone else pulled out a phone, maybe recording. Garvin tried again, lowering his voice like they were sharing a secret. "You'd be more comfortable in the back." That phrase did something. It wasn't just about seating. It was older than that. It was about assumptions, about being watched too closely in stores, questioned in airports, followed in parking lots. Solomon turned his head fully now, locking eyes with Mally. "That's all we're saying," Mally muttered. Solomon didn't respond. He stayed seated, staring forward like the conversation had ended. A woman beside him leaned slightly toward him and whispered, "Don't you let them move you." He nodded once, not defiant, not angry, just steady. He didn't want a scene. He just wanted to watch his son walk across the stage, but the guards weren't done yet. Mally tried again, suggesting if he had a problem, he should take it up with the school office. Garvin stepped in, voice sharper. "Sir, I'm gonna ask one more time. You can ask all day." Then came the sound of the gym doors opening. One by one, 6 men entered. Not together, not coordinated on the surface. But anyone watching closely could tell they moved the same. Calm, measured, alert. They filtered into different sections of the room, some near the bleachers, others along the aisles. No uniforms, no badges, but the way they scanned the room, the way they sat, still, steady, and ready, said everything. Solomon didn't turn to look. He didn't need to. He knew exactly who they were. And the guards? They didn't realize it yet, but they were about to find out. The ceremony continued in the background, names being called, diplomas handed out. But the real story was unfolding in the third row. 6 men had risen without being asked, and Solomon remained seated, jaw set, eyes forward, waiting to see what the guards would do next. Back in Afghanistan, Solomon had led these men through hell. Creed Marston remembered the day Solomon pulled him from an ambush in Kandahar, dragging him 200 yards through gunfire while bullets rained down like gravel. Javier Meeks limped behind him after Solomon freed him from a Humvee flipped by an IED. Zachary Wells had fought alongside him through dust storms and darkness. These were not just soldiers, they were brothers. And now, years later, they stood again. Not for war, but for respect. Creed took the first step, walking into the center aisle, calm but unshakable. "Is there a reason this man's being bothered?" His voice didn't rise, but it silenced everything else. Garvin looked up, caught off guard. Another SEAL rose from the far side, then another. The gym held its breath. Creed stepped closer. "You don't put your hands on that man. You don't tell him to move. You don't ask again." The silence in the room thickened, not fear, but understanding. People realized they were witnessing something historic. Solomon finally looked up at Creed and gave the smallest nod. Not thanks, not request, just recognition. The guards hesitated. Garvin glanced at Mally, who looked less confident by the second. The tension hadn't left the air. It had built. More people were watching now, phones raised, whispers spreading. Creed didn't sit. Neither did the other SEALs. Their presence alone was enough. Then Garvin made his mistake. He leaned in close, belt brushing Solomon's knee. "You think wearing that uniform makes you better than everybody else? This is a high school, man, not your base." A hush fell across the rows. A little girl stopped squirming. A dad froze mid-zoom. Even Mally took a half step back. Solomon didn't blink. He took a breath, not to calm himself, but to stay grounded. Then Creed stood, just like that, not loud, not aggressive, just present. "If you touch him, you'll answer to me." Garvin turned. "Who the hell are you?" Creed took another step. "The man telling you this ends right now." By now, school staff had noticed what was happening. An assistant principal was whispering into a radio. The gym had become a living thing, stirred awake by injustice, steadied by honor. Solomon remained seated, hands resting on his lap, eyes locked on the stage. He wasn't defiant, he was present. The rest of the SEALs stayed on their feet, not posturing, just standing. Their silence spoke louder than any microphone ever could. The ceremony pressed on, names still called, families clapping. But the energy had shifted. Tyron watched from the lineup of graduates, heart pounding. He had seen his father sit like that before. At school events, family gatherings, moments where someone tried to test him. His dad never raised his voice. He just held his ground. Now 6 men stood behind him like they had never stopped having his back. When Tyran's name was finally called, the applause wasn't chaotic, it was deliberate, coordinated, deep. The 6 SEALs clapped in perfect unison, a salute without the salute. As Tyran walked across the stage, he met his father's eyes. Solomon gave the smallest, most meaningful smile of the day. Tyran nodded once and stepped off, knowing he had just witnessed something real. Outside, the sun was fierce against the concrete. The last of the SEALs were getting into their vehicles. Creed gave one last look toward Solomon's car before driving off. Solomon placed a hand on his son's shoulder. "You okay?" Tyran nodded. "I was ready to walk off that stage, Dad. I swear I was 2 seconds from saying something." Solomon smiled. "That's why you didn't." Tyran looked up. "Because you knew I could handle it? And because you handled your moment like a man. You didn't let anybody take it from you." Tyran held his breath for a second. "Who were those guys that stood up?" Solomon glanced behind him. "Men I bled with. Men who know what loyalty means." Tyran nodded slowly. "That was powerful." Solomon replied, "It was necessary." For a moment, neither of them said anything. Then Tyran smiled. "You gonna tell me those war stories now?" Solomon chuckled. "Some of them. You're old enough for the real parts now." They stood there shoulder to shoulder. Not just father and son, but 2 men connected by something that couldn't be explained, only lived. Solomon unlocked the charger, the same one his wife used to drive to parent-teacher meetings and weekend road trips. Tyran paused at the passenger door, running his fingers along a scratch near the handle. "She would have been screaming the loudest today," he said softly. "She would have made you retake every photo until your smile looked just right." Solomon managed a grin. They climbed in, shutting the doors behind them. The car was warm from the sun, but it felt like a cocoon, sealed off from the rest of the world for a few breaths. Tyran turned to face his father. "I gotta ask, why didn't you say anything to those guards? You just sat there." Solomon tapped the steering wheel once, then turned to him. "Because I don't have to stand up for who I am, and I don't need to raise my voice to be heard." Tyran looked out the window. "You know how many times in my life I've had to choose between letting something slide or blowing it up?" Solomon continued. "That moment today, what those men tried to do, it wasn't new. But how we respond, that's what defines us." Tyran thought about it. "But they disrespected you." Solomon nodded. "Yes, and everyone saw it. But they also saw the truth. As they pulled out of the lot, the school faded behind them. But the memory of what happened inside that gym wouldn't fade anytime soon. for anyone who was there. And for Tyron, that day would mark something far greater than a diploma. It was the day he realized manhood had nothing to do with noise, and everything to do with how you carry yourself when the world stops watching.